So for our lovely Miss M, she did just have a little moment with my husband as our special guest for doing some proper hellos. He'll be back. He just had to go in the other back room to do a video call for his work. But he's going to come back and we'll maybe be able to practice in a little bit again with Miss M. But what I wanted to also touch base on is that remember that if that scenario is not an option to practice at the time. So let's say company coming in and out is too stressful. There's not enough moments for you to work the dog while also dealing with the person coming in. Then that's where management's going to be your best bet. So if you cannot help your pup through the setup, don't bother doing it, because then she's going to rehearse the things you were not really loving and the things she's getting really good at, which could be that jumping behavior. So if again, company equals a lot of excitement, you might even want to practice, for example, working with her where you come in and out of your door. You may even find to practice a bedroom doorway or a bathroom doorway. So it doesn't have the exact same association as the real door, and build up your dance moves there. So that way, let's say coming in and out of the doorway with you is not so exciting, you're at least practicing how to get her to hone in on the skills you'd rather before the person actually shows up and you work it in the real world situation. So remember, you want to have the skill set under her belt before you need it, not during the session. So she did a really nice job with my helper, my husband, Eric. And of course, my little one came over because she was checking in to see what we were up to. She was having her yogurt. So of course she was wearing her bib still, because that yogurt of course gets sloppy. So for Miss M, what I wanted to work on was a little bit too with that loose leash walking and then coming into your space and reorienting. I know we touched base on a little bit on Tuesday on some of those pattern games as well for her. You might also find maybe busting out the pattern game at times when there's some excitement, and then see if you can get her to bounce back on the number 3 again. But for now, I'm just going to do a little bit right now. She's looking at the flirt pole toy because she says she really likes that sheepskin tuggy. So there's also on, you can shop online. I find cleanrun.com has a really nice selection of tuggies that are also fake fur and sometimes real fur. But a lot of times the dogs do like those a lot. So getting a toy that she could all of a sudden put in her mouth or go to play with that has a handle and then you can play with her could be a great option. So I'm going to quickly actually grab a toy that she might enjoy and just show you what I mean by sometimes using a play moment as well. I know that we did do a little bit with the flirt pole right all of a sudden during the proper hello video. And that's because I found that Miss M was having a bit of a harder time with that distraction. So I'm just going to grab 2 toys, one that's a little bit different than the other, so I can sort of show you what I mean. So there will be all different options for tuggies. I normally recommend, and I know I'm going back into the film zone here, so I normally recommend one that has a toy and then a handle at the other end. So the benefit of this is you can make the toy come alive and you don't have to have something as big as your flirt pole busting out in the kitchen or living room zone. I do recommend, though, practice some play throughout the day, even with no distractions. So remember that a lot of times, if the only time you play is as company's coming over or something is getting hard, or just to rev the engine and not really practice those breaks, then what we could be doing is getting her too excited for certain situations versus helping her redirect onto a better outlet. So the benefit of a little bit of play, and especially with something that Miss M can then grab and then you can hold the other end, is this could be play with both of you together. So now I'd go ahead and let's say the toy is alive and we're playing. I might go, ready? Millie, yes. So I might go right into, she's like, no, I really like the toy best. If your babe is more of a toy drive kind of gal or boy, I would recommend to sometimes have 2 toys or have a variety of food where you can also reinforce her and make her seem that there's value in letting go. So for Miss M, again, the toy comes alive. We can see if she wants to go and grab and play with the item. And she's been doing a really nice job. If you find she's not going for the toy, remember too that the only way your dog can cool off is by panting. So if let's say Miss M is getting kind of winded through doing some practice or she was doing some playing, we may find that if she's not grabbing for the toy anymore, it's because she's trying to cool her body down. I find that she really likes the sheepskin the best. So this one, for example, was a little bit of a smaller, but not quite as big as my other flirt pole, but it's been around the block, so it did eventually break. So the benefit of sometimes a little tuggy is now if, let's say, Molly, I'm sorry, my girl was Molly. So I get so confused easily with my love. So Molly was my girl, and she reminds me a lot of her. But when Miss Millie is practicing, what I would recommend is play a little bit when she can't always get to what she wants. So I'm not saying 24/7. Nice job, lovely. She's like, oh my goodness, I broke him in half. See, it's been around the ringer. So for your babes, if let's say sometimes and she likes to pluck things, which is very normal. Ready? Millie, find it. So plucking is where your pup is taking the item and they're pulling the fluff out of it or the fluff out of the material of the toy. For some dogs, if they do a lot of behaviors like these are very natural dog behaviors. She thinks it's really fun. For a lot of dogs too, gutting of the toy and ripping it apart is super reinforcing and fun. So for some folks, they will grab cheapo toys from, let's say, a consignment store or donation toys. And if she tries to consume them, then I wouldn't do this heavily. But notice how Miss M, all she wanted to do was rip it up, which is perfectly okay. And for some babes, that's a really great outlet. So remember how some babes would like to chase and dig and of course, bark and bite and tug. All these natural dog behaviors, sometimes if you put, let's say, some treats in a cardboard box, and then you allow your dog to rip it apart and get at it, as long as they're not consuming the cardboard in excess, then they could go and open up that item and get their prize. So we may find for Miss M is if, let's say, certain toys could be something she could redirect on. Ready? Nice job, cuteness. Then that means that we could start to include play as a venue for redirection. I'm just going to tidy up for the little Miss M so she doesn't eat the fluff by accident. So that way what you're starting to do is give your babe an outlet other than food, for example, or if they can't get to the target, be it the person, the dog across the street. It's a great way to build that frustration or drive away from the distraction onto something instead. So Miss M is doing a really nice job with some of these little moments as well. She's not as food driven at times. And that's because I'm just going to take her leash off so she doesn't trip on it. So, and that's where for some dogs, remember, food drive is also an indication of either comfort range, how they're feeling with the exercise or how well they understand it. She's going to go grab a drink. And then also at times, if the environment is too stimulating or too overwhelming, food may lose its value because of the fact that the dog is so either over aroused or overwhelmed. So if your babe is not always going for food, that could maybe be an indication of that comfort range. I know she is starting medication, which I'm very excited about for her. Remember the first few weeks on it is kind of like a transition point, figuring out how much or how little or the dosage and all that. But then also it takes a couple weeks to kind of get them in the groove with the medication, how they're feeling. Sometimes food drive, ready, set, can go down a little bit for some. So, but that should be getting back to normal after she's been on it for a little bit. So, but remember, a little bit of up and downs when you're figuring out just the right amount is typical, but don't give up, 4 or 5 months into it. Because remember though, just like I mentioned earlier, pairing the medication with also a behavior plan is going to be the key to success. If it's just simply medication and she still rehearses all the skills you're not loving, be it skill set to behavior, she's going to really get good at those behaviors and master them. And then that'll still come out when she gets most overwhelmed. So just like with us, skills we practice and we work on, we tend to master. And even if they might be a bad habit. So for our dogs, a lot of times we'll do a little bit of loose leash walking without our gear for a second. But for a lot of our dogs, remember that they only have certain ways to tell you how they're feeling. And sometimes it's by not responding to the behavior or skill set. And then other times it could be with how they're taking food or how they're playing. So since they don't speak English, they normally will use their lovely doggy behaviors and body language. So definitely start to figure out, what is your babe's base? Where would you like, chewing, so sad. She's like, I've almost got it. So where's your base starting? Where would your goal like to be? but is the goal attainable for you and your dog? So since it is a two-way street, it can't be just one-sided where I'd love my dog to completely ignore everything and everyone and just be completely off in the bubble doing nothing but relaxed. So sometimes having these thoughts are not always conducive to setting up your babe for success, because if perfection is the goal, we may never get there. So, but having Miss M feel comfortable around new people coming in and not feeling the need to go bombard them, and we show her how to do something instead, that might really set her up for great success. So always when in doubt, think to yourself, does my dog know or understand what I'm asking of them? If they don't, how can we set her up for success? And that could be by preventing her from even doing it. So if, let's say, meeting and greeting is really hard because Miss M is super excited and we're not able to work on it, I wouldn't go right into that behavior instantly. So I think my husband maybe got off his phone call. But anyway, when we go into working with Miss M again, we'll try a little bit with some of these little hellos and see if we can add some movement or some more normal human movement around the dog. I know in the beginning having robot people that just kind of hang out can be awkward. Millie, come. Nice job, cuteness. So, but Miss M did a really nice job for this lovely little segment and the previous. So we'll go ahead and we'll try a little bit with the my special guest again and give it a try. Nice job, Mill. Good girl. So great job.